So close and yet so far for Norwich City. Doesn't that just sum up their season? It was another case of that at Old Trafford on Saturday. They, of course, got beaten 3-2 by Manchester United. A Cristiano Ronaldo hat-trick will undoubtedly dominate the headlines in the national newspapers and certainly in some of the analysis of this game, but that certainly doesn't tell the whole story. Welcome back to the PinkUn.com Norwich City podcast in association with Future Radio. Connor Southwell joined by Paddy Davitt to review that epic game at Old Trafford yesterday. It was entertaining. It was frustrating in points. It was disappointing in the end for Norwich City, Paddy, but probably in terms of performance, given what we spoke about after Brighton and about them showing positivity and reasons for optimism for maybe what comes beyond this season, a step in the right direction, would you say?
For me, definitely, Connor. Yeah, I think ultimately, I'd kind of almost resign myself, if that's the right word, pre-Brighton, that it was going to be beyond them. The Brentford game, the Leeds game, the manner of those defeats against teams who at those respective stages were within catching distance. And Dean Smith said after the Brentford win, that put them, I think, 10 points clear and almost over the hill. And they've of course kicked on now, as have Leeds. And I think at that point it was okay. They need to show us something in the block of games that remain, that you can almost look towards next season now and see, particularly, which was increasingly the charge being laid at Dean Smith, was what is the Dean Smith team about? What are they trying to do on the ball? What is the identity you would associate with a Norwich City team casting Dean Smith's image? We didn't really see any of that in and up to that period. But I think Brighton, to a lesser extent, because that was a pretty grueling watch and really owed more to Brighton's profligacy in front of goal that day. But they did get a point. It was a clean sheet, built on it with the win over Burnley. And okay, no more points to add to the tally. But I think another episode at Old Trafford. In the main, yes, we'll get into the negatives, but in the main, more positives and more, for me, certainly evidence of players who, in the right kind of setup and shape, you can see how that would work and certainly how that would function very well in the Championship, which is clearly where Norwich are heading. So, yeah, I think on balance, as Dean Smith said, it'll be a disappointing one to take, the result, but performance-wise, a lot of pleasing facets and the trend now feels, certainly in terms of positivity, in an upward curve rather than, the thrashing about that we were getting kind of certainly after the Brentford, certainly after the Leeds games. And that needs to continue. It isn't enough for me now to sort of have 2 or 3 games of respite and, okay, yeah, now we can see it. We can see what a Dean Smith Norwich might look like. They need to continue on now. And if they get some results along the way, you would hope that would be the case. But I think the bigger picture, is, where we're at come the start of next season in terms of, yeah, right, they're ready to go. Now there's players here who are good enough to take Norwich on again and almost start a new cycle and a new positive cycle under Dean Smith.
Yes, absolutely, and it was certainly I felt a step in the right direction. Of course, where Norwich City are this season and the position they're in at this moment in time, they can't really afford to operate in any other currency other than points at this moment in time. They, after yesterday's result, sit still bottom of the Premier League table, 7 points behind Everton, who now have 2 games rather in hand. They can, of course, go 10 points clear of Norwich if they beat Leicester at home on Wednesday. Although Leicester have picked up their form somewhat, so they've won 3 of their last 5. Everton have won 2 of their last 5 with 3 defeats in there. So it does look increasingly a tall order. I think, as you said, Pat, I think most people maybe now probably resigned. They're looking for elements of what comes next at Norwich City. But if we kind of bring that back a little bit and speak about now, does half the battle with Norwich City at the moment, if you look at the goals they conceded yesterday, all of which to Cristiano Ronaldo, of course, and that is exactly what he's there at Manchester United to do, because in open play, I thought he was relatively ordinary, but in the moments that matter, he, of course, has the quality that decides games. But half of Norwich City's battle feels like, not necessarily against their opponents, but often, again, it feels like they're battling themselves. I mean, Ben Gibson maybe is the best example of that from yesterday, but countless others throughout this season.
Yeah, and yeah, if you sort of want to dive deeper in that direction, I mean, is it ultimately that the quality isn't there across the entire breadth of the squad /11, and I don't dispute Ben Gibson. We'll sort of focus in on him because he was, front and centre really of those first 2 goals. Not in a good way, obviously, as anybody who was present or has subsequently seen the highlights. Following on again, I keep talking about the Brentford game, but really it was his rashness and poor decision making at key moments that tilted that game, firmly in Brentford's favour at Carrow Road, and to keep repeating the cycle, it does lead you to think that maybe at the top level he's not consistently, because it's worth noting that after Brentford, I think he was dropped for the next game, but he did come back in and was good. Was good in recent games. I thought Burnley and Brighton he was good both of those games. So there's a player there who can on his day maybe step up, but can he over the entire piece? And is that because he's an honest lad as well, does he maybe have somewhere in his darkest and deepest recesses, maybe he feels a bit like a few others in this Norwich team? Are they actually Premier League quality? Are they week in, week out good enough to be on the pitches with the Ronaldos, even a 37-year-old Ronaldo? Because, to be continually making these basic individual errors, it's not a good sign. It's not a good sign. It's, ultimately, for Norwich to have got anything really at Old Trafford, they need to be foot perfect, and whatever else United do or didn't do on the day, Norwich have to be faultless. They can't gift, as they did with Ben Gibson, 7 minutes in, all the fractious backdrop with supporters outside protesting against the ownership, and certainly those players on the pitch firmly in the eye of the storm, because they haven't, in the eyes of a lot of those United supporters, really performed to the levels they would have expected, certainly matching the kind of heritage of that club in recent modern times. And all of that, and then he stands on the ball, or he tries a silly move to drag the ball away from Anthony Elanga, who pinches it, squares it, Ronaldo open goal. Easiest goal he's probably scored in his very long and very illustrious career. And you just think, why do Norwich and why has Ben Gibson made that so easy for them to get their noses in front? Because the longer that game goes, and we saw ample evidence of that in the second half, when Norwich got back to 2-2, that crowd were baying, you're not fit to wear the shirt. That was a very, very audible chant directed towards those United players. The stick that Pogba got when he was taken off, on and on and on. And in that context, Norwich had to be very resolute, give nothing away, ratchet up the pressure minute by minute, get their noses in front even better, and then the place could have exploded, and not in a good way from a United point of view. So for an experienced player to do what he did, as he did against Brentford, there's other examples through the rest of the season. It's we have to be harsh, but I don't think he's Premier League grade. And if they slip back, as he showed 2 seasons ago, he will do a more than passable impression at the Championship, because he is a good defender. There's no doubt about it. But I just think at the level Norwich are striving to compete at and sustain themselves at, he's one firmly in the bracket that isn't good enough. And it's just a shame, that Andrew Mbama-Daly and this back issue has essentially curtailed his second half of the season, because, without wanting to load all the expectancy onto his shoulders, we'd seen enough, I think, in a Norwich shirt and a Republic of Ireland shirt to feel that this kid's quite a special talent. And him alongside Hanley, I think that's the way forward. And obviously there's a wider issue about Grant Hanley and whether he stays beyond the summer and whether there's interest in him. But if it was to be Hanley and Mbama-Daly moving forward, I think you're set there for a Championship campaign, but then also maybe, hopefully, the following season you're back in the Premier League. So fundamentally, Ronaldo, as Dean Smith said, gets the headlines, but goals were handed to him on a platter, and that isn't by any manner of means meant to single Ben Gibson out, because there's others who I think fall in the same category in this Norwich squad, and we don't need to go and list them all now. But ultimately, you're making that volume of errors week in, week out. It's not going to end well, and it won't end well in terms of league status. So it's harsh, but that's what Dean Smith now needs to decide. Which of those players are good enough, not simply for another season of Championship football, but beyond. And that's what will frame so much of the debate moving forward into the summer, that if they're ever going to break this cycle, and yes, we don't need to get into the self-funded model and the perceived limitations of that, because that's a different debate. But in terms of on the pitch, with the playing resource available, if they're ever going to break the cycle and stay up and then build from there, then they need to source players who won't make the residual mistakes that some of these players do make, and that's the top and bottom of it, really. Because if it was a one-off and we hadn't seen that from Ben Gibson before Saturday, then you cut him some slack. But we only go back to the Brentford game, and it's the same. It's the same. It's whether it's a lack of confidence in his own ability or whether it is just at the highest level. Any error, any sort of dwelling on the ball, any indecision, whether that's mental or physical, will get punished. And particularly when you're playing against the attacking quality that United do possess, irrespective of how well or not that season's panning out in terms of their expectations. If you give Ronaldo an open goal 6 yards, 10 yards out, we'll say, or even the second goal, Ben Gibson, split second too slow, that trigger move from Ronaldo. The ball is great from Alex Telles. It's a tremendous leap, which is what he's got in his locker. He's brilliant in the air, but don't make it easy for him. As Dean Smith said, the battle's lost. When Ben Gibson tries to rise with him, the battle's lost because he needed to be in front of him, blocking that run and preventing him from getting anywhere near that Telles cross. And again, these are very fine margins, but at the highest level against, let's be honest, as Dean Smith said on Friday, a player who'd won multiple Ballon d'Ors, the best player in the world, even at 37 years of age. That's all it takes. Fractions of indecision, and you'll be ruthlessly punished. And Norwich have been, both this season and last time in the Premier League. And they know that. But ultimately, if you're Dean Smith, it's not as if he's got too many more options in the centre of his defence now, has he? With no Omar Daly, no Kabak. So for me, I think Gibson will play again against Newcastle. And he may well play very well, but you just feel that him and others, there's always too many mistakes in them at this level.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think that's probably what makes it frustrating when you boil it down. Like you say, players make mistakes, and that is to be expected. I think it's the regularity of which those mistakes have arrived. And you boil down and dig into Cristiano Ronaldo's hat-trick yesterday. One came from a Norwich City mistake, as you said, Ben Gibson giving the ball away. The second was a set piece where they didn't block his run and he was able to get a run on Ben Gibson. And the third was a free kick that Tim Krul probably should have saved. So you look at all of those 3 goals. None of them really came from Manchester United cutting through Norwich City. They came from errors, and they came from maybe disappointing moments where, as Dean Smith said after the game, you would expect better from the players involved. But to contrast that, I mean, this was maybe one of Norwich City's best attacking displays of the season. I think that's probably fair to say. I mean, I've got some of the statistics in front of me, whether you like expected goals or whether you don't. Norwich City amassed higher than Manchester United did. Shots on target were very good as well. All of those statistics suggest that Norwich City were effective going forward. And this kind of new counter-attacking side that we've seen in the last 2 games, where Timu Pukki and Milo Rashica look to stretch defences and Kieran Dow comes a little bit shorter to connect them, seems to be paying dividends, Paddy. It looked very effective and hurt a Manchester United side who, once you bypass their midfield, Norwich, I think, actually found that there was lots of space.
Yeah, and the real frustration is that I'm not going to say they've stumbled into this sort of mix, because clearly they haven't. We go back to the Burnley game. It was very similar in terms of, Dean Smith and Shakespeare looked at it, felt Burnley was susceptible to transitions, as he calls them, counter-attacks, and set a team out and personnel in that team to exploit that. And it was the same again in their most fertile periods at Old Trafford. Again, United so vulnerable. Maybe that's part of the reason why Pogba seems to be persona non grata. That him and Fernandes, Lingard, they wasn't offering that protection between the lines. And Norwich, in that maybe 10 minutes before half time, through to Pukki's equaliser, they were just pouring through, and it felt like every time they got on the ball and got anywhere sort of over the halfway line, that there was something there for them. And as I say, there looks to be a cohesiveness to Norwich set up in that way to counter teams, rather than more so in Barker's previous seasons, but even at the start of this season, wishing to, construct a team that were better in possession and maybe control games through possession. I think it's been proven that Norwich haven't got the players, certainly in midfield areas, to allow them to do that. So you need to find a different way. And the last 2 games, albeit one win, 1 defeat, but that looks a Norwich team who can cause Premier League sides problems. And the frustration now is that there's only 6 games left. It isn't that we've just turned into January and there's a very big block of games left. And you could go with that approach and basically invite teams on, and look to be solid defensively in the main, with the protection of a Norman or a Kenny McLean, as it has been in these last 2 games, from the start of games at least, and then release Rashica, release Malou, Dowell. And of course, what that has done fundamentally, and he's on the score sheet again at Old Trafford, is really transformed Teemu Pukki's effectiveness, because he's gone from back to goal, isolated, really doing so much work outside the box and limited amounts of opportunities inside the box, to the player we've seen at his devastating best previously in a Norwich shirt. Balls being fed through the channels so he can make those very intelligent runs off, as it was on Saturday, Lindelof and Maguire, and running through with keeper to beat. And that was his goal on Saturday. Brilliant ball from Dowell, reverse ball through 2 United players. Perfectly timed. There was a VAR check, but he's onside. He's gone through, composure, and he's beaten De Gea at his near post. And he had a similar opportunity 3 minutes in, and maybe we'll put that down to he was a little bit cold in terms of the shooting boots. But it was a good save from De Gea. He came out quick and got his right shoulder up. But following on from Burnley, he in this type of team is a far more effective weapon, and It is. The more I think about it now, it's hugely frustrating that it looks like Norwich have found a formula which can be effective, but the game is already up. So, as we've said at the start of this pod, moving into what's next, if we continue on this trajectory of the remaining 6 games and you see more evidence of that, and Pukki's, having chances created for him, he's taking those chances, they're really putting teams on the back foot, then there has to be a healthy degree of optimism, while still, I'm sure that the post-mortem on another relegation will be pretty forensic, and there may be some guns trained on certain sporting director and recruitment. But if you can get past that, you can begin to see the beginnings of something which could be very effective in the Championship. So, it's good. We're seeing it, but tinged with, well, why couldn't we see this a bit sooner? Why we're not Shakespeare and Smith maybe able to deconstruct it a bit sooner? And they might turn around and say, well, it's all well and good saying that, but Norman's only come back in recent times. They've been without Pukki for periods. Rashica was out. It's very hard to maybe get to a point that you were looking to do if the personnel isn't available for whatever reason. But it is what it is, and Norwich have had to deal with that. But there's no doubt, the way United were vulnerable to the way Norwich were trying to play the game in that second half, particularly. That bodes well, very well, for the longer term future, if not what happens between now and the end of this season.
Yeah, just finally on the game then, because I want to move on to some other topics and maybe some players individually. There's been a fair amount after this game of noise on social media, should we say, about the substitutions and the timing of the substitutions and why they were made. On 74 minutes, Norwich City took off Kenny McLean, who was struggling. I think and Dean Smith said after the game that there's fears that he's broken his toe. And they also took off Kieran Dowell, someone who, as you said there, made a real impact and scored and assisted at Old Trafford yesterday. And after the game, he said to us that he has been dealing with a little bit of a hamstring concern throughout the week. So when you look at those two individually and maybe put them in the context of what Smith has said and what Dowell has said, they maybe make more sense. But actually, a lot of it was around how Norwich City lost momentum, and they did, certainly from an attacking perspective, but equally Gilmore and Poeta, who came on 75 minutes, weren't responsible for the reason Norwich City conceded on 76 minutes when Ronaldo put a free kick in the top corner. And from there, I felt actually United managed the game a lot better. They brought on the Nemanja Matic. Their midfield was a bit more compact. It was then into game management mode, wasn't it? So what do you make of the criticism that Dean Smith has got for Norwich City substitutions at that point, albeit they did look, and certainly from what both Smith and Dowler said, felt necessary as well in that particular moment?
Well, that's the answer. I don't understand why you or how a head coach can be criticised if you've got a player with a suspected broken foot and another player who was, as Dean Smith said, didn't train a huge amount during the week, and if he's revealed he had a bit of a hamstring problem. Ultimately, both of those decisions were effectively out of Dean Smith's hands. It wasn't that he suddenly decided, "I know this is working very well. We've really got him on the back foot. I'll change it now and throw the pieces up in the air again." So that doesn't really stack up for me. And the other point you make, I think, is a fair one as well. Anybody wanting to portray, Gilmour came on, they suddenly conceded, they got beat. It's all Gilmour's fault. If we want to get down that path, then ultimately it wasn't Billy Gilmour who conceded a free kick. It wasn't Billy Gilmour who paddled the ball into his net. So, and I think the psychological element of that, you could see in the immediate aftermath, when that ball hits the back of the net, Ronaldo runs off delirious. Those Norwich players, they were gone. Heads down, air's gone out of them. It was almost like we've expended all of this energy and fight and spirit to get back on level terms, and then this happens. It's almost like it's not meant to be. And yes, they tried to rouse themselves. And Poeta, there was an opportunity there when the ball got fed into him, and he again, he just wants to get it on his left all the time. He's in the right back slot. He should be pulling the trigger with his right. But by trying to pull it back onto his left, he's allowed, I think it was Maguire, to come and close the door. But Rashica, Norman found him in a similar spot, and he couldn't get a shot away. There was opportunities, just it didn't feel that the tide was with him at that point, post Ronaldo's free kick winner. And I'd be more inclined to look at maybe the psychological element of that and just really, it's almost how do we rouse ourselves again kind of thing, rather than, pretty unfairly for me, if anybody's sort of attributing that to Gilmour's arrival. I think if Kenny McLean had not pulled up lame, Kenny McLean remains on the pitch. So we don't see Gilmour. Poeta, well, clearly he might have felt tiring legs in the United ranks in the final stages with his pace. You could maybe exploit it, stretch the game. Johnny Rowe came on as well a little bit later. Maybe that was part of the same thinking. But again, Dowell scores, Dowell assists. Dowell's looking like a very creative, effective force. I don't think he comes off the pitch if he's not struggling with a bit of an injury. And ultimately, that flows back to what we just said earlier, that there's maybe a path Dean Smith wants to go down, but if there's injury or illness, then it's very hard to continue down that path if you don't feel you've got other similar type options. And I don't think Poeta has got Kieran Dowell's ability on the ball, and maybe Gilmour doesn't have McLean's drive on the ball. So really, it's more, as I say, the circumstances rather than Dean Smith has turned round and made some poor selection calls in terms of his substitutes. I don't see that at all. He was forced to make them. So what is he supposed to do? I mean, you could argue, could Sorensen have come on instead of Gilmour? Would they have been any less effective? Would they have been maybe more solid? That's a good point. But then that flows. I think basically anybody who's going down that path is flowing it back into the Gilmour debate, and for me, he shouldn't really be involved now. I think the ship sailed. Norwich aren't going to stay up. He's not going to be here next season. What do Norwich achieve or get out of in terms of the forward-thinking elements of the strategy now, playing Billy Gilmour? So for me, I would have liked to have seen Sorensen on if he was going to have to make a change. Dean Smith sees it differently. He obviously thinks Billy Gilmour could have given him that control. There was one free kick, which we know, he's produced goals from free kicks this season. Wolves, there was a corner that Grant Hanley scored against Southampton, Smith's first win. So he has that ability from dead ball situations, like him or not like him. But unfortunately, he hit this one too far over Grant Hanley at the back post, and the chance went. So, for me, Gilmour shouldn't really be even part of a debate now, but I certainly think it's very harsh to hinge his arrival with Poeta in those circumstances as Dean Smith lost the plot. I don't think that was the case yesterday.
No, I'm going to mount a little bit of a defence for Billy Gilmour because I didn't think he was too bad when he came on yesterday. And actually, it could have been Andrea Pirlo that Norwich brought onto the pitch. They'd still have been 3-2 down because I don't think either him or Poeta touched the ball before Ronaldo fired it into the net via Tim Krul's palm. So, I mean, Billy Gilmour, his passing numbers are usually pretty good, and I don't think that's the issue maybe many supporters have with him. But no Norwich player set up more shots than Billy Gilmour did, and he was only on the pitch for 23 minutes. And there was one pass to Rashica in particular that was very good down that right-hand side as well. I think, sadly, the image that Norwich fans are going to be left with is that pass very late on, which he put out of touch just in front of them, and that ultimately will be the one that they go away with. But I didn't think that he was. I certainly felt he was more effective than Przemysław Poeta when he came on yesterday, and probably John Rowe as well. Albeit John Rowe only got 15 minutes. So I would agree with your assessment, both that Billy Gilmour wasn't the reason Norwich City lost that game, as maybe the debate has turned to, but equally, it probably is time now for someone like Jacob Sorensen to step in and let's see what he's got in the last 6 games, because he is a permanent Norwich City player and he is ultimately going to be a player who possibly is going to be around next season. So it makes more sense to look to develop him at a higher level, ready for maybe the Championship next season. And by the same token, I suppose the flip side of that is maybe maybe I'll let you chip in on this, Pad, before we hear a little bit from Kieran Dowell. Maybe there's a financial element to this as well, because as we understand it, the more Billy Gilmour plays, and if he hits a certain amount of games, the loan fee that Norwich pay Chelsea at the end of the season is significantly reduced to a point where if it's about 30 games, I think it's effectively a free loan, isn't it? Do you think that's playing a part in the decision to persist with Billy Gilmour even when the season maybe is ebbing away from Norwich City?
I can't see it. I mean, as you rightly say, that is the figure, 30 threshold. Now we would assume that that's not 30 starts. That's just 30 times on the pitch in the Premier League. In which case he's not going to hit that. So they're not going to. I'm pretty sure. I'm not checked, but I'm pretty sure he won't hit 30. So he's not going to. They're not going to run the clock down to 0 as it is. So if you're talking in terms of the tens of thousands between him playing now and not playing, then they're playing for far bigger stakes than that, really. So no, I think what that boils down to is, and you mapped it out there. People can choose to look at elements of his game, but then maybe Dean Smith is looking at those metrics you talked about in terms of his chance creation, his ability on set pieces, and maybe feels that he is still better than Sorensen in that regard. And if in the context of the game where it was very delicately poised at 2-2, a little bit of quality from Gilmour, a threaded pass here, a set piece there, that could have made the difference. And, ultimately it hasn't made the difference enough, I think, over the entire piece this season to warrant us saying it's been a successful loan, certainly not from Norwich's point of view. Billy Gilmour will probably get far more out of it as he goes back to Chelsea. I'm not necessarily seeing him closer to Chelsea's first team, if I'm honest, on the body of what he's done this season. So it will be interesting to see what next for him, whether he has to go out again on loan. But, fundamentally, I don't think the financial consideration comes into Dean Smith's thinking. Could you see, like Stuart Webber basically saying, I know you're not overly keen on Billy Gilmour, Dean, but we need to play him to run down to save us a few quid. I know it's a self-funded model, and I know every pound is probably a prisoner, but not to that extent. I don't see that. I don't see Norwich's finances being shot to the degree where Billy Gilmour plays or not. And I mean, on that point, we were discussing it in the car journey going up, that the way James Maddison is going and the numbers, not to draw a parallel between Billy Gilmour and James Maddison in terms of their effectiveness in a Norwich shirt, because I think we know where that goes. But if as increasingly looks likely, he may be engineering himself into a position where he's going to be coveted this summer with those numbers, why wouldn't he be? Norwich have a very healthy sell-on in the original deal that took him to Leicester, and that might be a windfall of £4 or £5 million. I know that's hypothetical, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility. And, if that is the case, and as I say, allied to whatever else they've done in terms of the finances, and we're led to believe that they will be in a relatively healthy state come the end of the season, despite the pandemic drain on the finances and sort of recovering from that and the seasonal bit of no revenue inside the stadiums, that they are going to be in a good place financially for Norwich this coming summer. So if that is the case, then yeah, that's a non-starter for me that Billy Gilmour continues to play through financial considerations.
No, I agree. It's just a point that I've seen made, so I think it's important for us to debunk that. Here is a little bit of audio from Kieran Dow. Then, as we said, fairly influential. In the last two games, really, but certainly at Old Trafford yesterday. I caught up with him in the Old Trafford tunnel of all places. So this is what he had to say about the game. Couple for me. I mean, it feels like in the last couple of weeks you've been, as a team, better at kind of counter-attacking and hurting teams in transition. Do you feel that as someone who's playing in the side at the moment?
I think we see ourselves as this season as that being one of our strengths, counter-attacking. And I think it's that first pass has been good. Once we've won the ball back for the transition, that's probably been the sort of key to good counter-attacks. And then getting numbers up behind Timu and Milot to sort of sustain the attack. That's the most important things there.
You mentioned Timu and Milot there. Do you feel as a player it's helpful? I mean, you spoke about last week that they stretch the game. Does that give you more space to do what you want to do and come short and to try and connect it?
Definitely, yeah. I think it's vital to have that balance. The gaffer's always on about one coming short and the other two going deeper. So that's what I like to come short, sort of thing. So it's nice that they also like to go deep. So it works quite well, yeah.
Do you feel there's I know we kind of spoke about opportunities, but it felt like last year you had Emi Buendia and Todd Cantwell to really compete with. They obviously aren't here for whatever reason. Do you feel like there's a real opportunity for you in the long term to stake your claim in this team now?
Yeah, definitely. Since I've won some play, and I feel like that's your chance to sort of take that opportunity, so I'll keep trying to do that, yeah.
I've got to ask you about the pass as well for Timu's goal. I mean, that's some vision, isn't it? I mean, you must take great pride when he goes and finishes it off.
Yeah, I was made up we finished it. Because, like I said, we knew there was chances and they were the sort of patterns we were talking about at half-time to do. But no, I was buzzing when he finished that bit.
Last one, Newcastle next week. What do you take from that into that game at Carrow Road next weekend? I
think we've showed that we can score. We scored 2 goals at Old Trafford. So Newcastle probably aren't as strong as Man United. So that's a positive going into that game, yeah.
We live Norwich City.
The builder.
The passion.
The drama.
The last-minute winners.
The debate.
That's why we've created PinkUn Plus.
The app that takes you beyond the headlines.
With exclusive columns, blogs, podcasts and videos, we've got you covered.
Subscribe today. PinkUn Plus. Stay ahead of the game.
Download now on the App Store and on Google Play. There we go. It doesn't get much better for a Scouser than scoring at Old Trafford, does it? You shouldn't imagine. And I think he definitely enjoyed that, albeit maybe not the result. But Pad, I mean, talking about another attacking player, and he seems to go under the radar, maybe not just by external people, some people internal as well. Timu Pukki, I mean, 10 Premier League goals in a Premier League team that has only scored 22 times this season. He's become the first Norwich player to reach double figures in successive seasons in the Premier League era. As we must caveat all of these discussions around Timu Pukki, a free transfer as well. He's some player, isn't he? I mean, you look at some of the players that he is level now, or even has overtaken. I mean, for all the praise that West Ham have got this season, he scored more goals than Mikel Antonio and Jared Bowen. He's level with Mason Mount, Raheem Sterling, Jamie Vardy. He's a real talent, isn't he, Timu Pukki? And it feels like it probably doesn't get mentioned enough quite how good he is.
No, definitely not. And I think I have to hold my hands up, really, because I have to be honest. This time of the Project Restart season, where he looked shot, of confidence, of form, of kind of even the physical sort of spark and crackle to his play, that electricity, the way he moves across the pitch. It just looked like that had all sort of dissipated, really. And then probably the grind of how that season unravelled for Norwich had really, took its toll. Worth caveating, of course, that halfway through that season, he got that foot injury, I think, from memory at Leicester. And he never seemingly looked to be the same player again, irrespective of the backdrop of, obviously, the team was struggling and going in the wrong direction. But, my concern was that had we seen the best days of him, and I think since then, just had a look there. He scored 31 goals for club and country last season, another championship title winners medal in his back pocket. And this season, as you've mapped out there, Connor, to go double figures in a team which, until probably very recently, has not been configured to get the very best out of him. struggling team, a team propping up the division, a team heading back to the Championship. It really is phenomenal, and it's a testament to that man, really, and his staying power. I think it was very premature indeed, maybe 2 years ago, thinking that his better days were behind him. He looks still to be, as the numbers prove, but as Dean Smith said, he also mapped out yesterday his general play, the intelligence of his movement, the ability to really give to established international centre backs in Maguire and Lindelof a lot of problems. How he links the play, not only now that he's getting serviced and he can go on and be a goal threat, but how he linked. I mean, the assist for Dowell, that's him coming short, linking with Yanulis, getting in behind, again, intelligent movement, and then the composure and the calmness to clip that ball across. Because too often this season, we've seen Norwich in very promising positions in the final third, and that final cross or pass is just awry. And, that precision, more often than not, is not there for Norwich. But he certainly possesses that. And he's just, we all know about his character and the type of person he is. He's just, he is by some measure Stuart Webber's best signing. I don't think there's any debate about that. And that's probably even before you get to the fact that he was a free transfer. So the finance, we just talked there in that segment about Gilmour and the financials. Well, the financials around Pukki, astonishing, really. That was a staggering piece of business, and just underlines maybe since how precarious recruitment is, because sadly, not every signing you make will turn out to be Teemu Pukki. And if it was, then the game would be very easy. So credit to him, credit to Norwich as well originally, and then finding a coach in Farker who very swiftly realised that we've got a special player on our hands. We have to set this team up around him. And of course, the relationship he forged with Buendia. And that's what we need to see now. Smith's job now, given it looks from what all parties are intimating he will be here next season, that is to find him the right midfield framework within which we can continue to see him score goals. I mean, he's 32 now. He'll be 33 by this time next season, but there is nothing to suggest that his powers are dimming now. And if he still has the hunger and the appetite, and you feel that is the case because of the way he's playing at the minute, then you continue to rely on him as the main man. And I just hope then that it also then buys Smith a bit of time, because inevitably he's not going to go on forever and there will have to be a transition, but it can be more phased and more evolutionary than, right, okay, we now need Timu's coming out of the side for whatever reason. Who the hell is going to score Norwich goals in the quantity he scored them? And if he's still there and around the place next season in the Championship with the right midfielders around him, as long as he steers clear of injury, I see no reason why he won't be into a very healthy figure of goals again. And if he does that, he's going to edge ever further up those goal-scoring charts for Norwich and embellish what is already, I would feel, a very special place amongst the hearts of many Norwich fans.
Yeah, I think it's some incredible numbers. I mean, I mentioned it in the Premier League. I'll read you some of the players who are above him. Kevin De Bruyne has 11 goals, which is one more than Teemu Pukki. Harry Kane, 2 more goals than Teemu Pukki this season. Ronaldo has 5 more. Mane only 3 more goals. Ivan Toney and Wilfried Zaha with 2 more goals and 1 goal more than Teemu Pukki, respectively. So, I mean, some players that are above him, but equally, there's a lot of players who he's ahead of this season for a team that, as we said, in which he's been starved of service. The opportunities to score goals have been relatively limited. I mean, those moments like Kieran Dowell's pass this season have been few and far between. He's lost Emi Buendia, he's lost Todd Cantwell. The fact he's still scored 10 goals for Norwich City in the Premier League this season is truly remarkable. I mean, you talk about the overall kind of Norwich City debate. He's now 1 short of Grant Holt in terms of all-time goals for the club. He needs 4 more to overtake Ralph Hunt and enter the top 5 of Norwich City's all-time top goal scorers. I mean, it's history in the making that we're watching Teemu Pukki produce at Norwich City, and that's before you kind of think about the prospect of another Championship season in which he's scored 20 in both times he's played at that level. There's no reason to suggest he couldn't do the same if he's still at Norwich City beyond the summer. He really could become an all-time Norwich City great. We could be looking at someone who could even rival the top 3 all-time record goal scorers at Norwich, which would be truly remarkable for someone who, for all of that context that you've spoken there, signed on a free transfer, was a lot of people when he did sign were kind of thinking, who is this guy? And now we're talking about a player who's competing with some of the very best in terms of goals in the Premier League in a team that sits at the bottom of it by a distance.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and it will only be when you get that, when he does eventually come to the end and he moves on, and there'll be a bit of distance put between, his career at Norwich and how he's revered, almost, certainly respected, that you will have an even greater appreciation of what a special player he has been for the football club. And it's just a shame, really, that a player like that they couldn't have managed to meld a team which could stay up, because I think if they had done in 1920, I think he would have gone on and probably got even better and grown as a player, because he clearly, you can see that what he's doing now at the age of 32, he still has that drive and that hunger. He's not satisfied with those type of numbers and those type of metrics. We've not even got into what he's done for Finland. Finland's record appearance, certainly record goal scorer. I'm not sure if he is the record appearance holder. He can't be too far off. I know he's clocked up 100 caps, but the one there, the column that matters there, is record goal scorer. He had Jari Litmanen, and I'm thinking there's somebody else whose name has escaped me now, but for Finland, but a tremendous quality of player for his international country as well, and yet he's in an illustrious company there, and there's no doubt about it. He will go down as a special player in a special period for the club. You span back nearly 120 years, two titles in 2 years, 2 Premier League seasons as well, 2 top flight seasons in old money. That is front rank in terms of Norwich's chapters and history, and he has played arguably the leading role really over the entire piece. And I'm pretty sure when Webber and Farker went and recruited him and persuaded him to come to England and try his luck in the Championship, they thought they were getting a good player. They certainly didn't think they were getting this type of output. And, you just hope that he is still here next season and that he can continue, as he has done, to continue scoring goals, setting new marks. And hopefully, there's a chapter or two further on from that. But, yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, it's for me now, it's probably he should be ahead of Hanley, although it's still a bit of a close race in terms of the player of the season voting, I'm sure, in the eyes of many Norwich supporters. But I just think now, as good as Hanley has been, is at present, I just think a striker in this side not really set up to service him in and the amount of chances he has had to rely on to produce those numbers. For me, if I did have a vote, and if I was casting it, I think it'd be for the GOAT.
Yeah, me too. Actually, me too. I've got the Finland caps in front of me. He's fourth at the moment. He's behind Jonathan Johansson, Sami Hyypiä, and of course Jari Litmanen, who has 137. Pukki on 102. Johansson got 105. Hyypiä 106. So I think there's a possibility that he probably ends his career as maybe the second most capped Finnish player, but it's going to be probably a tall order now at his age to maybe surpass Litmanen. But we shall see. I think people said that about the goal tally as well. But there we go. I think in summary, Teemu Pukki is a very good footballer, and Norwich City are very lucky to have him. I think that's basically what that segment comes down to. And Kieran Dow again said the same after the game. If we end then, Pad, by looking ahead to next weekend, it's a home game against Newcastle. Again, we don't really know what position Norwich City are going to be in because Everton play in midweek, and as we said, they could stretch their lead. They could extend the gap to 10 points over Norwich City, which would be pretty fatal, wouldn't it, if it isn't already at 7? Is it just about replicating this level of performance that we've seen in the last 2 games now for Norwich City? Is that the name of the game in the last 6 games? And for Dean Smith to, I suppose, begin to embed, as he has done in the last couple of games, a real sense of identity and purpose to this Norwich City side that maybe has been missing a little bit in the weeks before that?
Well, all of those, yeah, but it needs to be about results as well now, because ultimately where Norwich are heading, which looks like the Championship, it'll be all about results. It'll be less about styles of play and identity. It'll be relentlessly, remorselessly putting wins after wins after wins, and you need to have that culture in this group, and I'm not expecting or entertaining the idea that they're going to now go win for the last 6 games. If they do that, then it's to be very interesting at the bottom of the table. But I certainly do think that, over what remains now, they need to pick up 2 or 3 maybe more positive results in terms of adding draws or wins to the column, and then it does for me put some clear separation between maybe 2 seasons ago where they just I know there was it was the project restart period. There was no fans in the stadiums. We were all far more preoccupied with other matters in this world. But in terms of a purely footballing context or a parallel, it would be different. It would feel different. It wouldn't feel they were limping meekly back to the Championship with their tails between their legs and what's to come. And then of course the overlap or the overhang the following season, again, still with no fans in the stadium that time around, but still that kind of having to dispel a lot of doom and gloom and pessimism maybe, that could they repeat what they'd done previously, which thankfully they went on to do. I think the mood music would be transformed completely if Norwich were to continue in this vein, performance-wise, results-wise, and then it's irrefutable evidence. Then if you've posted a final block of 10 Premier League games against good top-end opponents, against teams around you, teams in between, and you can actually point to a curve which is heading in a positive direction, both in terms of performance, in terms of style, in terms of identity, in terms of personnel, looking comfortable with each other on the pitch and on the ball particularly, and crucially results into the bargain, then it's right, bring it on, bring the Championship on, let's get it right in the transfer window, let's improve this squad again, and then let's build on what Smith and Shakespeare have put in place, which will be a platform then for something which is a bit more cast in their image, certainly. And Newcastle, the next one, that's very interesting because my mind goes back to the reverse fixture. I think that was 4 games or so into Smith's reign, and we all know how that one panned out on Tyneside that night. Eddie Howe just gone in there. Norwich were above, I think, Newcastle when he went to them in the table. They have a man sent off 10 minutes in, 80 minutes on against 10 men, and they're reliant on, again, the main man, Timu Pukki, whacking in a wonderful equaliser late on. But, what's happened since? Newcastle have gone from strength to strength. They've navigated a January window. Howe, to give him his credit, has really moulded that team to pull very well clear of relegation trouble. They've got no issues now. They'll be in the division next season. What would have happened if Norwich had got the win that night? Who knows now? It's ifs and buts, unfortunately. But what you would like to see when the 2 principals resume at Carrow Road this weekend coming now is that more evidence for me of Burnley. Part the United result, but certainly the vibrancy and the enthusiasm, the energy, the intensity that they showed at Carrow Road against Burnley. We need to see that again from the off against Newcastle. And I'm sure if they do, that those home fans will row in behind that. And if Norwich can go on and get another positive result, then again, it's all about belief now and trying to build something from a very fragile, disappointing, frustrating season. And if they can do that, then I think we can hope for better in the months and weeks ahead. But ultimately, it won't paper over what hasn't gone right this season, and there still needs to be, irrespective of how the season ends now, for me, there still needs to be a very clear acceptance that they've got things wrong and that the areas that they've got things wrong, and then again a reset and trying to go again and trying to turn the cycle again in a more positive direction. They've done it before under this management in terms of the strategic management, and they will have that challenge again. And as Dean Smith says, it's all about climbing mountains now.
Exactly. We'll leave it on that note. Maybe all you need, as Newcastle will prove, to get yourselves out of a Premier League relegation race is £80 million and a state-backed ownership group. That tends to be the way to get yourself out of trouble. But we'll see just how that pans out at Carrow Road next weekend. I think you're spot on. It's and to be fair, I mean, you speak about fans responding. I felt they did that against Burnley. And you saw the scenes at the end at Old Trafford yesterday where all of those Norwich City fans were on their feet applauding the effort that the players have put in. It's about performances, it's about pride, it's about offering optimism for the future. And if Norwich City can continue in the vein that we've seen, certainly in the last 2 games, then I think everyone will bounce into the summer feeling a little bit more optimistic than perhaps they were a couple of weeks ago. Just at the end of the show, I think we should probably apologise for not having a podcast last week. But as you've noticed, it is just myself and Paddy at the moment, so the workload upon us is increased somewhat. But we will hopefully make these regular for you, and obviously, hopefully, we'll have we will have a new member of the team soon enough, so that will make life a lot easier as well. So thank you for staying with us. Of course, make sure you check out the PinkUn Plus app, $1.99 a month. You can get a free trial for a month as well at the moment. Plenty of exclusive content on there, both around the match day and during the week as well, as we continue to cover Norwich City for the remaining 6 games of the season. And one thing is for sure, even if the season is fizzling out in terms of prospects of survival, it's certainly not dull covering Norwich City, is it? Thank you very much for listening. Happy Easter to you all as well, and we'll see you again next week. See you soon.